I have no idea if we're live. Are we live? Am I live? Is that happening? No, not yet. Am I live? Am I live? Live. Yo, okay, okay. Checking. Standing by. All right, this is fun. What's up, everybody? Standing by. All right, this is fun. Thick. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So I am so excited to announce the Beanstalk. Specifically netrunnerbeanstalk.net. Netrunnerbeanstalk.net. So, what's up, folks? Okay, so I've been working on this project for a while. My wife can attest to it. I've been pretty freaking obsessed with it, and I'm really happy how it turned out. So what I'm going to do is walk through, of course, like the website, the motivation, what it is, why it came to be, the whole sort of features around it, how I hope it shapes I don't know, just like a Netrunner in general. I think it could have some positive benefits, which I'll talk about. I'm going to walk through the actual website features, like the ranking algorithm, what to expect. We'll take a look at like past seasons, and we'll even talk about what the heck the season is. And then I'm going to go into like the nerd stuff, right? Talk about like the architecture, the technology behind it, how it's built, how you can help. Netrunner is one of those games that, surprise, surprise, there's a good amount of programmers that like to build stuff. So I'm hoping to also do a bit of a call to action to be able to help out in improving the website overall. So I got to be honest, I have no idea how many people are watching. Who's watching? This is my first time doing this. Okay, I got it open. Five concurrent viewers. Let's go. Okay, this is for the VOD anyways. So let's go through and talk about, first of all, the website. So netrunnerbeanstalk.net. The main core feature that I've built here is just a leaderboard. So the goal behind the Beanstalk is to give Netrunner just a globally tournament leaderboard. And the important thing is I wanted to tie the leaderboard to seasons so that every year as the tournament cycle progresses, where we start off with circuit openers all the way up through Nats and Continentals, Worlds, Intercontinentals, and now there's the CBI is like the regular tournament NSG season. I want to tie the leaderboard seasonal ranking to roughly that time window as well, so that every single year, we get an influx of new cards, new content, we get a new tournament season. I want to give people a shot to be able to, show up and collect beans throughout the season to show up on this leaderboard. So right now we're looking at the all-time, just across all seasons. And this is a collection of the leaderboard. Obviously, I mean, there's always been a Sokka test where if I've ever made a change to the leaderboard ranking, generally Sokka should be showing up here on the top because, as we all know, he's not human. That's just what it comes down to. He's just not human. Let's first do a little exploration here of the leaderboard. So first of all, every website needs a search, and we got search. I mentioned seasons, so there's a drop-down season where we're just going to be incrementing from season 0 all the way up to, this game's going to be here forever, so infinity. I've added a little name to each one of them. Season 0 is unique in that it actually is composed of a longer season. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 kind of years along with it, but this is season 0 starts with like the NSG era tournament season. So there's no things like store champs or anything like that. Beans is, obviously it's a nod to Andre here, who says that a lot. And I'll talk about Beans in a minute. But so this is the complete last year tournament season, starting from CBI, the day after CBI to, I guess the day before the last season. I actually have to double check. Anyway, season 2, Green Beans, is this season. So there's been a couple of tournaments this far. I took down a CO like the weekend after the CBI. But there's been a couple other bigger seasons as well. So I'll talk about a couple of like the different tournament types and how it factors in here in a little bit. But you can also filter by faction. So Top Shaper. Dang, I'm not Top Shaper this season, at least so far. You can also filter by format. So right now this is you can only select standard, startup, or internal. You can't mix different formats. We may change that to be a multi-select later on, but for now, you can only select one format. And then lastly, we have this notion of tags. So I'll pop back out and then select NorCal, which is a tag that I'm managing. And then tags allow you to create a local regional just tag that you can tag tournaments. So you can have a subset of the leaderboard for either your local region or a tag type or some recurring tournament structure. If you want to run use the leaderboard for your like snake draft tournament and you run a monthly CO or something, like you can use the leaderboard and the tagging system to create like a subset of just tournaments that you want to include in your leaderboard. And so jumping into the tags UI here, we'll have a list of all the tags available so that people can, tags are of course public information. Once you're tagged, you're tagged. So anyways, there's a tag owner, you can have a tag name and only show your tags as well. Obviously there's a little search bar up there as well. So since we're on the topic of tags, if you pop into your profile, let me actually get this a little bigger. You can actually create the tags here in your profile. So we can go ahead and create a new tag. Let's call this thing like announcement tag. I'll delete this later. Create the tag. And then if we go in here and click tag name, then we can just start, start tagging tournaments. And this is a multi-select, so I can select, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and add these tags. And now if I pop into, let's go back to tags, announcement tag, now you can see, hey, I have this thing, it's tagged, it's ready to go. And you can manage your tags in your profile. Let's go ahead and delete that. Oh, I have to delete all of the existing tags, and then we'll go ahead and delete the tag itself. So anyways, I want to first share everything is tied to, oh, that's interesting. This UI should no longer be there. Fun, finding bugs. Everything is everything is tied to your Netrunner DB account. So ABR uses Netrunner DB as its login, and we do the same here. So if I go ahead and hit login, it's going to take me through the normal like NRDB OAuth flow. Go ahead and hit allow, pops you back in, and now I'm like logged in again. So let's talk about where this data is coming from. So everything in ABR is tied. Well, first of all, I'm pulling all of this information nightly from ABR. So always be running.net. This is where we all go ahead to, create our tournaments. Each tournament has a tournament type, which I'll talk about in a minute. But more importantly, the way that I associate the player to the leaderboard is it's all done by claims. So you don't have to actually post your deck list, but you do need to claim. So let's find one. Has anybody claimed but didn't post? This is World. Everyone's posting their deck. But basically, you don't have to actually post with decks. You can just claim straight up on ABR, and then you'll get credit for that tournament in Beanstalk, because every night I have this background job that will pull all tournaments, all new tournaments that have changed, and I'll ingest all that data into a separate database, which is then what populates, this entire website here. So it's all powered entirely by ABR. You don't have, separate username, password, login, all that stuff. So I guess before I launch into the beans part of this, I want to spend a little bit of time on like the motivation and like why I spent some time here. So this came, and also I'm going to plug nanpc.games, but this came about because I got pulled into this discussion around nanpc. Hey, we want to build this sick player circuit. We want to improve the tournament scene. We want to, bring back a competitive, I guess, like edge for people. And more importantly, we wanted to bring a leaderboard so that people have a really fun incentive to like compete with each other in a way that chained your performance across tournaments, right? We all generally know like the people that consistently get top 16 at Worlds or whatever, like consistently some of the best Netrunner players, but we don't have like a good leaderboard to be able to really capture someone's performance consistently throughout a season. And so the nanpc came about as like a way to, God, this website is sick, Alec, to like give people a space, right? Let's throw together some like top tournaments, and let's create a leaderboard for it. And Beanstalk came about because really my wheels just got turning, right? Once I started thinking about this technical problem, this challenge, how to build a leaderboard, what should go into it, and Whiteblade was like, well, let's start small, right? And I just plowed so hard into this, totally nerd sniped, and I like absolutely became so passionate about this project. I just like really, really loved it. It was so fun. So I spent I don't know, a couple months, maybe 3 months or something, just like obsessively working on this project. I learned, TypeScript, React, Cloudflare Workers platform, like CSS, HTML. It was my first website I ever built. So definitely went hard into it, but I'm really, really happy how it turned out. And my goals for the website here is that it impacts my goal is that it positively impacts the Netrunner tournament scene. I hope it gives people something to like fight for and be proud of their experiences throughout the seasons. I hope it shapes the tournaments in a way where people, obviously you're fighting for prize support in a tournament, which is, sick alts and, like playmats and the chance to like design a card, like all that stuff is really awesome. And I see beans, which I also haven't talked about, the best important unit of measurement of all time, which is a bean. Beans is another form of prize support, right? People now can compete for beans. And what's I think could be really fascinating about this is that, you don't have to win like a ton, like top whatever to get some beans, right? Here in 25th in Worlds 2021, right? It's a pretty sizable chunk of beans here. And so I didn't make day 2, but I still got high enough in Worlds where I got a pretty good amount of beans. And so I think it's really interesting to see do people start playing in a tournament for beans? Like, oh shoot, I'm on a path to like not make the cut, so therefore I'm going to drop. I'm guilty of this. I do this all the time. But now I think I'm actually going to want to play those out and really see if I can recover and try to get the most amount of beans throughout this tournament. So I think there's going to be my goal is that there's going to be an interesting take on like, maybe it shapes behavior in a tournament, which I think would be so fun to see. So we'll take a look at this. So let's talk about the beans. So a pretty core tenet or like guiding principle for what I want for this website and just like this whole process is to be as transparent as possible. I think there should be no magic. There should be no mysticism. Like going into a tournament, you should know exactly what placement in a tournament is going to distribute in terms of beans. And I wanted to give as much clarity into the decision-making around it so that I can get a ton of feedback and that everybody just knows what's going on with this leaderboard. So first of all, let's talk about beans. Beans are points. That's like the unit of measurement we use here at the Beanstalk. I guess it's also highlighted in the FAQ here. And the BTZ forever has called the card Beanstalk Royalties green beans. And that's really sort of where this came in my mind. It's like, you know, you're climbing the Beanstalk royalties, you're like paying to climb the Beanstalk. Anyways, beans, got to get them beans. So I want to first start by saying, this is like I'm going to say, like, let's say minimum lovable product. It's like not a minimal viable product. I think it's pretty good, but there's a lot of room for change, right? And I'm calling this part in the FAQ out. The bean like distribution and the algorithm in general is not locked. In fact, it's like so dead simple. I got a little bit of help on a number of people that found the website early and folks that I reached out for to help tweak it and think about just the algorithm and how do we distribute the beans and, you know, generally go through this process here. And for the most part, it's dead simple. So I see a world where after we play out a tournament season live, that like we get some feedback, we say, it doesn't really feel right. That, let's say, I mean, this is some feedback I've gotten, like the Intercontinentals is like weighted too highly, or like it's not weighted enough, it's not really equitable. Like all of those things is like really good feedback that I want to hear from the community. So while right now I think it's pretty good, I think it is absolutely going to change. And especially now that we're launching publicly to the rest of the world, I hope to see lots and lots and lots of feedback. I touched on a little bit seasons. Oh yeah, it looks like Hello World is 2 years, but then everything else is like gated around, goes until CBI. Talked about tags. We haven't talked about opting in or opting out. So right now it's entirely opt out. If you go into your profile, you can click this little toggle here for user activate and, you know, entirely opt out. You do have to log in through ABR, through NRDB, like OAuth flow. But if you don't want to show up on this board entirely, like leaderboard stress you out, that's fine. You can just come in here and entirely opt out and you'll never show up on anything on this website. Custom leaderboards. I mentioned about the tag, opting out, talked about the origin story. And then I may want to spend a little bit of time on this piece here before I jump into the actual algorithm itself. So there's been some feedback that like there's some concern just that this project existing in and of itself could be generally problematic, right? I mean, we all know gaming communities can be toxic AF. And, you know, the thing that I kept going back to on this project is that the Netrunner community is like why it's so special. This game is so special. And I just believe that we as a community would be able to bring up any concerns in a constructive way, that like we'd be able to, I guess, lead by example, right? The people that are really the competitive folks that want to be on this leaderboard and do it in a way that hopefully is good for the community. And I just have a lot of faith here. And I think the thing that is, I think, just important to say is that like, if I see that something is, I don't know, or hear that something's kind of creating some toxicity for reasons, right? I'm going to like absolutely commit that I'll internalize the feedback, think about it more critically, and see if there's anything that we can do either in the product. But I think it's just important that we all, you know, lead by example and set a behavior. And I have no doubt that like this community is not going to fall into any sort of traps that other toxic communities have. Okay, and moving on, last on this FAQ page is like how to help. Well, I'll come back to this, but honestly, in any way that you would like. I've never built a website, like I said, so if you want to help, please do. I'll talk about the tech side of things in a little bit. Okay, let's talk beans. So, the the ranking algorithm is sort of everything, right? And I talked about the transparency side of things. So I have this code tab complete with, I don't know, why did I do this? Theme picker, so you can read the code in Synthwave 84, because why not? I don't know, pick your favorite. Ooh, I just had an idea. It'd be nice if you could, who cares? But it'd be nice if you could set your default in your profile. Yeah, let's check tomorrow. So this is just an embedded file that's like live and deployed right now. So this is the exact ranking algorithm. So anytime you're curious about sort of checking out what's the specific config right now, you can either read it in the code section itself, which I'll talk about all these like config variables, but you'll see that the ranking algorithm it's so simple. So much of this is like comments and other things. This is like 50 lines of code or whatever, which is just dead simple. Thank you, Lucas, aka Functor, for actually simplifying the algorithm, but this is it. It's basically like how you calculate this ratio, and it just creates like a decaying distribution down to, whatever bottom threshold you're setting, which we can get into that right now. For those that don't want to look at code because, it's not fun for many, all of the config values are also embedded in this like beans page as well. So I'll walk through some of these things. Let me first take a little sip here. And whoa, check up on chat. That's a thing people stream do. Augustus, I really hope that the incentive does. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how it shapes things up. Cool. Okay. So decaying distribution. So when I first started this project, I had in my mind like this Pareto principle. It's, it states that 20% of the input yields 80% of the output. And the way that I sort of thought about it was like, I want the top 20% of a tournament to get roughly 80% of the overall point total, and then have a decaying distribution down through the rest of the tournament. So that roughly the bottom, chunk gets like around 0%, but the top half is like pretty weighted heavily. That was one of the things that sort of jumped out to me as like a guiding, I don't know, just like a goal in terms of how I would think the distribution of a Netrunner tournament would pay out. The other component was I wanted to create a payout distribution that hopefully mapped like the difficulty and the, I guess, reward structure of a tournament so that it mapped like as well as possible to the tournament, right? Winning, and a couple of like, I guess like properties or heuristics that was really helpful for me is that obviously winning a really big tournament is, should be rewarded more beans than winning a smaller tournament. Winning, a Nats, and Continentals should reward different bean payouts. Winning Worlds should be different than, Continentals. So there's like a scaling factor on the size of the tournament and a scaling factor on the type of the tournament as you progress through the season, right? I wanted to create more incentive for people to be able to travel to those like more, I guess, like top tier, bigger scale tournaments. I also, wanted to create a top percentage of payouts. Actually, let me just like walk through these a little bit more here. So I mentioned that the tournament tiers, right? And the way that we configure the tournament tiers or the bean value that's going into the overall like point totals, which now I'm realizing I probably should work through this in advance before talking about it, but tournament tiers, we set a baseline bean value that just goes into the, let's say, total pool going to be distributed for that tournament. So Worlds and Continentals are right now equal, set at 250. Nats at 100. Intercontinentals is 200, which Intercontinentals is actually pretty unique and different. the way that it's like pointed out. Circuit openers is just 15, and a circuit breaker is actually set kind of in between 100 and 250, which is an interesting like discussion. Nats tend to have the highest degree of variance, where you can have like 100-person Nats, or you can have like, you know, a 12-person Nats in UK, right? So like there's a big distribution of the size of the pool that has actually made it pretty difficult to find where the right balance is. But I think this makes a decent amount of sense here. Okay, and I mentioned scaling the number of beans on the tournament size. So I think the simplest way to do this so far that I found is just, you know, award a bean per player that's added to the total bean pool. So as this, you know, as an example, there's a 256, you know, person worlds. The baseline would be 250 points, and then, you know, the point total here would be added. So 256 people times 2, 512, right? You get the gist here. Plus the 250, and that would be the overall like beans that we're going to be distributing. And then there's a like beans for top of Swiss. So the way that the decaying distribution algorithm works is that we basically take that total bean pool and then we give it to the first place, just straight up. So in that example, whereas 250 is 512 is like, I don't know, 750 something, whatever. We basically give that exact, I can just have all these examples here. Look at me. For a 50-person tournament, these are all of the point or bean, payout per tournament type. So 50-person, you know, worlds would give 350, 350, 265, and 300. And the way that this works is like the top of Swiss is the top anchor, and then we create this decaying distribution down to the bottom anchor, or like the bottom threshold. And let's talk about the top percentage winners here. So similar to how there's a top cut, I really wanted to create a feeling of like shooting for something. You know, when someone enters a tournament, everyone wants to make the top cut, of course, because it's how you have to make the top cut in order to win, and everybody wants to win. But some people just like making the top cut. Like that's everyone's goal. It's so fun, right? I think by setting a top percentage of winners, it gives us another goalpost that's before making the top cut, which I think will be really fun for people. So instead of, an alternative is like we take the top being like total for first place, and then we just decay down to 0. So that means like the bottom half is just getting like fractional amounts of beans, which is fine, but like I think it's just more fun to be able to hit either 0 or like a bigger threshold at, some percentage, and then you have like the top percentage of winners. So that was my motivation here for wanting to select a top percentage for winners. And so we've also set it up for circuit openers, which are generally smaller tournaments. They actually do decay down to 0, because I think it is fun for for a circuit opener for everybody to get something. Intercontinentals, again, there's a whole bit on this, which is like really, it gets complicated, and there's a whole bunch of schools of thoughts here. But I think this is pretty straightforward. 66, I don't actually know why 66. I just wanted it to be a little different. It's fun. Okay, so minimum amount of players. This is an interesting one, and it's particularly been interesting around Nats because, like I said, it would feel previously this number was like, I think it was 16, and there was a 15-person nationals in Italy, and someone won Nats in Italy, and it was like a bunch of amazing players, and they didn't get any credit for it, right? And so they reached out to me, and I was like, this feels really bad. And so I bumped it down to 12. There's going to be a tournament where like someone wins an 11-person Nats in some country, and they're going to feel really bad. But I think we still need to set this at some point. And right now the thresholds are 8 and 12. Circuit openers, there's a lot of opportunities to play CO, so I'm not too worried about that. And I think generally speaking, for the Nats that have smaller tournament, I think people hopefully have more of an opportunity to go to like more Nats in UK where there's like generally smaller Nats. So anyways, we'll see how this pans out here. Minimum players is important for me just because I think it's tough to balance if like you can then go, I don't know. I think it's just important to set a minimum threshold to be able to create a well-structured, this is representative of the competition required to win that tournament. Because of the base point totals, right? Having a, small Nats incentivizes people to create a bunch of small like Nats in different areas. And, you have a base point total. So that's what I'm trying to combat against with like setting a minimum threshold. And I'm jumping over intercontinentals because there's a lot to talk about there. And I'm setting a limit. Okay, I have a question. How many beans will be distributed for the NAN PC tournaments? Really good question. I'll talk about that in a second because frankly, I have no idea. There's a limit per tournament type. And the reason being is that I don't want this to be pay to win, right? I don't want like whomever has the most amount of funds to go to travel to like every tournament to just win, right? That sucks. But I want to give people an opportunity to get enough like reps across the tournament scene so that they can be like, have a really good representative, I don't know, just a performance, right? So we do have a limit per tournament type. And obviously there's only one's world, so that's obvious. Continentals, I've set for a limit of 1. Nats, I've got a limit of 3, which, there's always downsides to this. Like it's going to be hard for like US Nats, people in US to go travel to a bunch of different Nats. I guess there's East and West Coast, but this highly incentivizes, I think, UK Nats, or just like the UK scene when it's like way more nationals, locally, regional. But 3 is still a pretty low limit. I also think there's some online Nats, maybe. I think there are. There's only one intercontinental. Circuit openers, I've got a limit of 5, and that includes things like AMTs. So even if your like local meta isn't very active, there's still a lot of opportunities online to hit your 5 circuit openers throughout the season. And then lastly, there's only one circuit breaker invitational, so that's got a limit of 1. Notably, I will take the top like highest scoring tournament of that type. So you play in all 3 continentals, right? We're going to take the one that you did the best in. So it still incentivizes people that like, instead of if you hit your limit of 5 circuit openers, just keep playing as many as you can because you'll continue to farm at like the top tournament types. So let's talk about intercons. Intercontinentals is like this really weird tournament format, right? It's first of all, it's like, 3 lives sort of and you're out. They take the top 4 of every continental, and then they take those 12 people, smash them, and do this other weird cut. So how do you even like reward or distribute beans in that environment? Some people, myself initially, was like, this is sort of like a silly thing, right? It's like where, some people show up, they play off meta decks, they have fun with it. Some people can't even show up because, they'll make the top cut, me, top 4, and they can't actually make intercontinentals. So then it like goes down to these people, Man of the Moon, who won it, right? But wasn't actually able to go in because I think like CTZ and I both couldn't make intercontinentals. And like, that's totally fine. Man of the Moon absolutely crushed it and definitely deserved that W, but how much do we like reward for that tournament? And some people think that, actually this is another top cut of the best players across the world, so they should be rewarded like super highly. For me, I'm like, yes, it's sort of like a victory lap though. And I don't want to make it so high that in order to basically make the top of, the leaderboard for that season, you have to like get, top 4 in continentals, and then you have to get intercons. So I don't want to create like such a huge separation that, that's like the only path to getting in the top. Basically like winning worlds, winter intercontinentals, and therefore that's the only way to get on the top is not really the right like balance. I want to give people an opportunity to be able to play consistently well throughout the season and still make, super high on the actual tournament itself. So, anyways, intercontinentals was a tough one to figure out how to balance. I initially was like winner take all. That's fun, right? Let's do that. But ended up actually just setting for past seasons to be just a flat 200. But someone had a really good idea, and now I'm forgetting who. Might have been Bridgman. Damn, now I forget who actually helped. I've talked to a number of people about Beanstalk up until this point. But I landed on a pretty interesting balancing mechanic. Since Intercontinentals is a culmination of 3 continentals with hundreds of players, right? We thought it could be interesting to scale the number of beans based upon the total number of contestants who registered across all continentals. So season 0, I think this needs to be updated. I don't think it was season 0 because season 0 is spanned over 2 years. This is season 1. We saw 305 players, which seemed to fit like roughly in the kind of bucket of like where I'd want the overall balancing to be. So if I check, I can't do it in this. Can I do it in the simulator? Intercontinentals. No, I think this is just, yeah, in the simulator, it's just fixed. I haven't talked about the simulator in a bit. Anyways, so season 1, I believe we can take a look at, I guess Man in the Moon. Let's try. Let's see, Man in the Moon, season 1. I think he won. Yeah, okay, first place, 305. Okay, so we set I think this is a really cool balance. For Intercontinentals, we count the total number of registered players, not just the people who have claimed, but total number of registered players, and boom, that's your point value. So I think that's cool. Based upon like how successful continentals are, we give people a chance at that total pool. So it kind of scales based upon not just, the caliber, but also the size of the total continental pool. So that's pretty fun. Okay, I think that's it. On the bean side of things. Now, I reference in this page a bunch this simulator. So I've set this up where a tournament organizer can select, okay, we're going into a continentals, right? There's going to be, let's say 100-person continental. You can actually run the simulator. And like I said, I thought it was going to be really important for transparency. You can actually run this and see, where you are going to be close to, or you can see how many points or like beans are going to be distributed here. And you get to see the relative like cumulative percentage. So, 100 people, we're looking at pretty top heavy. It's not quite 80-20 here. I'm at 13 placement, and 80% of the beans are actually distributed at this point relative to the total pool. So the algorithm is still pretty top heavy, but I still think it decays at a rate that's pretty okay. So if we take a look at this, 8th place versus first place is like sizable, but it should be. Right, I think getting 8th place versus first place is a pretty big difference. And then it decays down to, in this case, since it's a continental, down to like 50th percentile, which we always anchor the bottom threshold at 1. So I think that's a perfect segue into talking a bit about some of the config values. I've already talked about like all of these configs, percentage of receiving points, they're configurable per tournament type, points per player, the baseline points per tournament type. And then I have this bottom threshold. So this bottom threshold is the only last mechanic I'll talk about here in terms of the overall ranking algorithm, which is we need to set a bottom threshold of which we're looking to decay that rate of bean distribution until that bottom placement, where we actually anchor, the point value. So first place is going to receive, whatever the total bean, total points are for that tournament type. And then it decays down to where the last person gets this bottom threshold. So I've set intercontinentals to be, 20. Circuit opener is 1, and all of these others just kind of like 2, 1, 1, 1, because it goes down roughly to that last point value. So if we go back to like Man in the Moon winning intercontinentals, we'll see that, boom, this last player here, why only 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I think the last person didn't claim. Okay, so no, maybe they only did 11. That's weird. We gotta check. I'm getting sidetracked now. 11. Huh. Interesting. I think someone couldn't make it. That's fascinating. So anyways, last player in this case anchored the bottom point value to 20. I think that might be it in terms of what I want to talk about. Before I jump over to talking about the sort of like tech and sort of the code and the architecture and infrastructure and stuff, let me catch up on chat. I guess, are there any questions? Oh, I should go back to NANPC. There was that question that Chris had. All right, let's talk about NANPC. So I agree with you, Chris, that I think NANPC should have a circuit opener or like, regional kind of vibes. I don't know if you know this, but you can actually, so anyways, since each of the tournament types in how I'm distributing the points is queued, entirely on the actual tournament type, in order to have a different ranking algorithm for NANPC, there needs to be a different tournament type. I talked to Necro, who's the developer of ABR, and there is now, I have to log in. There is now a separate player circuit tournament type in NRDB, in ABR, I'm sorry. Here, let's see if this is it here. Yeah, player circuit. So what that means is I can, we can actually configure this to be entirely separate. But the problem with that now is that, in my mind, or at least how I'm thinking about it, is that now it's actually not as equitable, right? Because this is a North America player circuit. And obviously I want to incentivize people to come out to that tournament. It's going to be so much fun. But should it go on the actual leaderboard with everybody else? I don't know, right? Part of me, like, I guess maybe the question is, if there's like a player circuit in different regions, maybe like it would be fine. Maybe I set this up such that we limit maybe one NANPC, like your best tournament, so that it makes it more equitable. So like people that are going to fly out for something, makes it so that there's less of an opportunity for, like, I don't know, some tryhard like me or whatever to like go fly across the country to play in all the NANPC tournaments. That's the big concern right now, is like equitability for just this leaderboard, right? So the way that I'm sort of thinking about it is treating it low-ish, like a like a circuit opener, or maybe like a circuit opener in terms of like the overall point value. Make a lower limit on that, but the NANPC leaderboard is intending to use this system, but in the tags you can actually create a tag. So like, we'll call this thing NANPC, create this tag, and then if you tag a bunch of tournaments, you can actually set it to be no limits, so that when your API, like you call the API for that particular tag, and that tag is set for no limits, it will actually not filter down or set any of those limits. So we can kind of have the best of both worlds, where we'll set a limit for the global leaderboard, and then the NANPC leaderboard will just like create this tag without using limits, and then it'll have its separate non-limited leaderboard. And since it's like fine if the point value is relatively low because it's going to be isolated to just that leaderboard. So that's sort of how I'm thinking about things now. It'll be set low with a limit, but it'll be unlimited in the NaN-PC space. Hope that addresses where I'm going to take the NaN-PC leaderboard. Okay. Now we're going to get into the nerd stuff. Diogene. What is NaN-PC? NaNPC.games. Check it out. North American Netrunner player circuit. Great website. NaNPC.games. Here, actually, can I post this? Yes, I can. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna now walk through some of the nerd stuff now. Walk through some of the like technical architecture, some of the code behind it, just the tech that powers this part. No sweat if you want to drop at this point. Okay, so I've had, oh yeah, of course, Diogene. How could I have forgotten? Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the Beanstalk, but more importantly, like the project that powers Beanstalk. So I think let's start by just sharing the architecture diagram. Duh. Okay, so I have built and deployed this whole system in Cloudflare's network, but more importantly, using the Cloudflare workers. It's basically a serverless architecture, similar to like AWS Lambda. Vercel has their like Next.js thing. I actually don't know much about it. Where the Cloudflare worker essentially handles every single request. And there's a number of different triggers, but you create these small kind of like API workers that handle a request, do a bunch of stuff, and return some data. Cloudflare is fantastic because they have this like very large distributed set of compute servers, and they have this like incredible caching technology. They have DNS. Like Cloudflare powers so much of the web. And first of all, their like free tier is just busted for small websites like this. I pay $5 a month. Really appreciate the kind words, Ba. That's great. I pay $5 a month for basically powers this whole thing, and it's just like super performant. It's fantastic. It's going to continue to scale. There's going to be no issues at all. But it allows me to like really develop quickly. I can deploy in seconds. Like I have nothing but good things to say about Cloudflare workers. So let's walk through this real quick. Netrunner Beanstalk, you as a developer, player, go to the website, goes through DNS, and at first it'll run through what's called Cloudflare pages. It's basically a Cloudflare worker that is connected to my GitHub repo so that whenever I push a change to GitHub, it runs through a build step and then it jams it into R2, which is like their S3 like kind of data store, and Cloudflare pages, which is one of their products, which is just a Cloudflare worker, fetches the assets and then sends it back to you. And once you've loaded the static assets, right, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then all the JavaScript then hits, again, netrunnerbeanstalk.net, but actually hits the API where it fetches, the leaderboard, it fetches the user data, it does all that stuff. So it's just sort of a dead simple like database. It's all SQLite. It's actually just, again, built on the Cloudflare workers, but D1 is one of their storage products. KV is a key value store where I have stored like all of the cached card data. just so I don't have to like look it up from NRDB every time. I just have everything locally within my own KV. The API worker also can talk to a couple of like pub sub topics, which is the Cloudflare queues product. And then I have this background worker, which is, it's still a Cloudflare worker, but it just has a different trigger. Instead of it's being triggered on API request, it's triggered on a cron job. So I've configured the cron to work at like midnight every night, where it will then hit the always be running API. It fetches all tournaments and then checks to see whether the hashed data coming from the tournament and the results is different. And if it is, then it will re-ingest that tournament, and using, you know, sort of more, again, these like sort of pub sub topics where I'll iterate through the tournaments and then I'll push those data blobs onto the queue, and then the background worker will asynchronously like slurp down those tournaments and then push more things onto the results topic. And then the background worker will slurp down more things from the results topic, jamming it into the database as needed. So all of this, you know, there's like a decent amount of infrastructure. It costs like $5 a month. That's just like their free tier, or, you know, paid tier rather. But yeah, this just scales. It's perfectly reliable. It's like got a great developer experience around it. I can't recommend Cloudflare workers enough. Okay. I think, what else do I want to talk about here? Oh, it's got an API. So Open API is this API spec kind of driven environment where you can generate code in your clients based upon this spec. So you go to this website here, and based upon the docs, right, you can see, you know, all the various like endpoints that are associated with it. Some have, for example, are auth. So, you know, users.me, you got to be logged in order to actually hit that endpoint. And then we have all of our like data models down here. So if you want to see like what data is being returned, you can actually see, hey, what is, you know, in the user object, or like what's being returned from, you know, this tournament object, right? So I chose to use Open API at this point because, well, there's a really good project that allows me to just use Cloudflare workers, and then based upon in-code routes, it will auto-generate the spec. So if we take a look at API and then go to schema, I believe, nope, source, and then Open API, I generate basically this Open API spec, define all the data here, and then it just auto generates this on its own. So I actually don't really have to do anything. I just set up sort of the actual like schema itself, and then I build the endpoints around the schema. And the most important part of all of that is I can code gen the actual like API clients on the front end. So anytime I make a change to the actual data, I just like run some command that will auto generate the spec itself. And the clients get generated. So then it just like works immediately. It's fully typed. It's great. I wrote a pretty exhaustive README on how to get started. It talks about the Open API spec, Cloudflare workers, you know, UI, etc. I learned just like React and UI for this project. So I built it using React, Tailwind and CSS for the styling. I just don't know anything about styling. I'm not a designer. Somehow figured it out. Spent a lot of time tweaking values and figuring out how to make things look okay. It looks okay. I use some of the hot like new tooling like RSPack for building the web like bundle, which is all Rust based, PNPM for the actual like package management. And there's a pretty good developer story around it. You can just like clone the repo, pnpm install and pnpm start, and you're off and running, and it should just work. I've got some IDE configuration. So out of the box, there's like a VS Code workspace file that allows like this multi-root workspace thing to get up and running. So it should be good to go. I've got CI running on this. So anytime if someone does want to work on this project, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on Discord. I'm just encoder on Discord. I can add you to the repo or make this thing, opened up so anybody can create some PRs. So I've got tests that I'll run too. If you ever make a change, then I'll run through, a suite of tests, especially the ranking test is like algorithm is nice and tested. And hey, look at this. You'll get a nice contributor. Shout out to Lucas, aka Functor, for helping out. I think that's about it. I've had a lot of fun with this. It's fully out. Go nuts. Go beans? It doesn't really have a ring to it. For what it's worth, okay, call to action here. I encourage everybody and anybody that wants to get involved too, right? Like I said in this FAQ section, we're just getting started. I want to see how this season pans out, but if anybody wants to like jam on this sort of technical project with me, please do. I am, I think you'll see, like, very humble in the sense that like this code is garbage. And it's just right for someone to actually come in and help take it to the next level that actually knows what they're doing. I spent a lot of time on it, so I've learned a lot, but I would love to learn from you in particular. So if you are interested and want to help in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out on Discord and also on Slack as well. All right, y'all. I think that'll about do it. Thanks, everybody. I'm really excited to see who's climbing the Beanstalk for season 2. Green beans. All right. Cheers.